is in Luke chapter 18. It is a parable, Luke 18, verses 1 to 8. It's a new month, so I'll be sharing with you a new series of messages about how do we keep on holding into our faith. If you notice recently, there are a lot of moving parts. There's so many uncertainties. We are thinking about this, and then all of a sudden something changed, and the situation is very fluid. It could just change in overnight. You could be planning for one thing, and all of a sudden it just changed everything. But what about our faith? But for one reason or another, our faith will be affected for one reason or another. So so I really thought that we have to have a fresh word from the Lord. And how do we cope up with all of this? With all of the changes, unexpected changes, whether personal, church, family. But one thing we really have to know is, where do we start? And I think this passage will bring the message. Resilient. When I was watching the video, I was just so moved by the word. And the church is resilient. And so I was thinking, wow, what a big word, resilient. And so I checked my dictionary. So what is resilient? Oops. I think we have to change batteries again here. Thank you, Sai. Okay. Let's just wait. Could you... Any idea what is resilient? No?
Bounce back. Bounces back.
Bounces back. Wow. Okay. Able to stretch. Okay. What else? Perseverance. Okay. That's good. Bounce back, perseverance, able to adjust, able to recover. Well, pretty much all of those are pretty much correct. They're just a couple of things that I would like for us to remember when it comes to resilience. Capable of withstanding shock without permanent deformation or rupture. That is according to Webster Dictionary. Capable of withstanding shock without permanent deformation or rupture. Wow. When I was capable of withstanding shock without permanent deformation or rupture. When you think of earthquake, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you're especially sleeping in your bedroom? God, don't let the house fall. If you're experiencing, anyone here experienced a big earthquake, a real big, huh? Anyone else here experienced big earthquake? Oh wow. Oh. The normal earthquake is you just sway. Remember that? Just sway, sway. Those are a normal earthquake. Just sway. Those are what we call fluid earthquake. Meaning the shock from the bottom is really a little bit far from you. So the tendency is for you to just sway. But there are earthquakes wherein you really experience like being dribbled. I don't know if you experienced that. Yung parang when you dribble the ball, when you experience an earthquake like up and down like that, up and down, it's no longer swaying, but up and down. That's what we called, you are a little bit closer toward the earthquakes, the epicenter basically. You might be asking, Pastor, what happened to those high-rise buildings? I don't know if you've been to downtown LA. You see those high-rise buildings, 70 stories, earthquake hits. They were designed to be resilient, meaning they were designed to absorb the pressure. I think by law, at least you have to have absorb at least 8.5. So when you design a building, it is already part of the design, and it will accept the pressure of more than 8.5. The higher you go, and that's when I think of resilient, that's what comes to my mind. Another definition is tending to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. Meaning you have the ability to recover when something changed or you got a misfortune. That is being resilient. Now, how do we put that into our... okay, so that's... Dictionary is one thing for us to understand, but how do we really put that into a layman's term? Now, you probably know this story. Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times when trying to create the light bulb. Imagine that, 1,000 times. When asked about it, Edison said, "I have not failed 1,000 times. I have successfully discovered 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb." That's resilient. The Bible speaks about a lot of characters being resilient. There's so many. Let me just, there is Job. He didn't want to go through all what he went through, but because he was resilient, he was able to manage through all of this. We have an entire series in the life of Job during the lockdown from March all the way, I think, to May. We were talking about the life of Job. I mean, it was something that he did not choose for himself, but he was able to adopt and able to capture or embrace the changes happening to his life, and then he became resilient. Another thing that comes to my mind is Jeremiah. Jeremiah is something that it's so hard to preach to people who doesn't want to hear about the Word of God. He was being persecuted, probably did not really want to share the message of the Lord, teaching them. But eventually, he keep on teaching. I think the message last Sunday was Jeremiah 29, 10 to 15. Remember that promise? "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in your future." We know that verse, but you have to remember, before that verse, there was this, for 70 years, you will live in exile. I don't want to repeat the message from last Sunday, but what Jeremiah was telling is, you will experience the goodness of God, but you have to go through a season of exile. And people doesn't like that. Well, generally, we don't like bad news. We only like the good news. Oh, hey, you got accepted. Oh, you are hired. But we don't like messages like, you're not qualified, or you're not admitted. None of these things. Sometimes we filter ourselves. We just want the things that's good for us. The problem is, life is not a series of goodness. Well, God is good, But life is a series of ups and downs. But even in our worst moment, we have to believe there's still the goodness of God. That's Jeremiah. Let me just go to our passage this morning. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. Okay. The unjust judge. Okay. If you have your notes with you, that's our first point. The unjust judge. There will always be people that we are dealing with that is unjust. People who will always make our life miserable. Okay? Hanapin na natin. There will always be people like that. Not everyone will be nice to us. Not everyone will be looking for our welfare. Not everyone who will give us the benefit of the doubt. There will always be people who will be unjust to us. Now, the parable begins with the unjust judge. This particular judge was a solo act, and he made it clear that he could not care less about God or who God was. Or he's an atheist. Perhaps he believed that his position made him equal or even greater than God. He also made it clear that he could not care less what men thought of him. So wala sa pakialam, he really doesn't care what people think about him. He doesn't really care. As long as he is in power, he is in position, that he has money, that's all what he cares about. And we probably know people like that in our lives. Now, walang pakialam sa atin. They just want money, position, influence. They just want to keep their position, they just want to keep their power, they just want to keep their influence, they want to keep their money. And to hell with everyone. But the unjust judge. The prevailing thought is that he would not hesitate to take bribes. Back in those days, it is easy to take bribes and give favors to person who held positions of authority. Men who had the ability to scratch his back whenever it was needed most likely fared quite well in his fortune. Meaning, if you could bribe him, you will give him, he will have the favor towards you. If you could give him something in return, then yeah. That's the kind of judge he is. Now, the story goes that there was this poor widow. A poor widow, well, back in those days, this is okay, I want you to picture this. Poor widow. If you became a widow back then, that is already a big blow financially, emotionally, spiritually, socially when you are a widow. Because back in those days, it was a man's world. When you were a widow, you automatically became a second citizen, especially you cannot take care of yourself, and that is a widow. Now the Bible says, poor widow. So it was a double whammy. A poor widow meant absolutely nothing to him, because all he asked was concern was about filling up his pockets, gaining honor and esteem, recognition and position for those who were influential, and also have a position of power with a large bank account. So the picture here is there was a poor widow who had this grievance, and he was asking the judge for justice for what happened. I don't know, the Bible is silent about I don't know what happened. It could be that someone probably, I'm just thinking out loud here, someone probably murdered his husband, and he was asking for justice. She already identified probably the people concerned about the crime and everything, and she was just asking the judge to give her justice. I could be wrong because the Bible is silent. It could be that another issue that probably someone took their house. Because she is already a widow, she cannot represent herself. So there was this. Am I losing my? Okay, thank you, Joe. We really don't know because the Bible is silent. We don't know exactly if someone is, if she was asking for justice for what happened to her husband, or asking for justice of what happened to her house, or whatever it is, it was a big deal to her. It was a big issue to her. And she was really asking, Judge, please give me justice. And the judge was just, they just look at her and she was just so poor. Verse 3. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with a plea. Grant me justice against my adversary. Okay, now let's talk about the poor widow. So we have a powerful, self-seeking, very influential judge, and on the other side we have a poor widow. Widow without a husband, probably asking for justice. She was poor. The Bible already declared that she was poor. Even if she wanted to shed, had absolutely no means to bribe the judge. She was a widow, a woman, all alone in a man's world. Imagine a woman living in a day, the time with no spouse, no money to pay for legal services. There was no public assistance, no legal aid, and no insurance of any kind. Wow. This poor widow, I don't want to use the word term, pero all of the, ano nga yan? What do you call it in Tagalog? Yung lahat ng kamalasan na yata. Diba? Parang pinagtakluban na siya ng ano, do you know the term? Pinagtakluban ng panahon? Is that a term? Langit lupa. Okay. That was her condition. She lost her husband. She was poor, and there were no kids to take care of her. So she couldn't even ask help from any community. She was by herself. But one thing we have to remember about this poor widow is she was persistent. She was persistent, making her request be known. Even though she did not fit the judge's godless criteria, she would not let it stop her. She just kept coming to this old judge and asked him to avenge her. Okay. When I was reading that, to avenge her, avenge is really a big word. It's not just a petty crime. It's something that is big. That's one example previously was either someone murdered her husband, or someone took her house by force, or something happened that is so big that she wants to avenge what happened to her. Now, if you could just imagine here, she was a poor widow living in a world that considers women second class. She was persecuted. She was taken advantage of. She was greatly abused by some adversary. If you could just expound your imagination here, she probably asked help from her relatives or from her husband's relatives. And they probably abused her or taken advantage of her. The word is she was abused. She was taken advantage by her adversary. Okay, let me just pause here for a while. In this life, we will always have an unjust manager. Okay? Agreed? You work hard You meet every deadline, way beyond what they can expect or imagine. And then when come performance appraisal review comes. Let me give you some background here. Because I have inside information when it comes to personal appraisal review. Every company's policy is this. If you are reviewing someone's appraisal, the rule of thumb of every company is this. Half should be above the average, half should be below the average. Okay? So that the company will have the average. I repeat. If you are evaluating any employee in your company, the rule of thumb is half should always be above. Outstanding, amazing, super performer. Half. The other half should always be poor, needs improvement, barely making it. Okay. Now the question is, who among the employees will go to the above average, and who will go among employees who will be categorized as below average? If you're evaluating 10 employees, definitely 5 will go to the above performance. The 5, you have no choice. It is company policy. Company will not tell you this. I'm telling you right now, company will not tell you this. But because the software, the algorithms behind this was designed for that. So that half will be below and half will be above. Now, if you're not in good favor with your bosses, guess what? Guess what? If you're not the kind who will come in the morning, hey boss, here's your Starbucks Frappuccino. Huh? If you're not the kind of employees that, hey boss, I'm going to Panda here for your lunch. Would you like me to order you some lunch? If you're not the kind of employee who rub elbows with your manager, you will always have a just manager. No matter how good you are, no matter how well you are performing, you will always have unjust manager. There will always be unjust politicians. I repeat, there will always be unjust politicians. Politicians who will choose to favor some, but not the others. There will always be a just bill collector. When you receive your bill in the mail, for the past 10 years, you're always on time. And then for just one payment, you missed it. What happened? It got reported in, credit, what do you call that? Credit bureau. It's so unjust. For the past 10 years, you're always on time, and just for one time, you missed it. All of a sudden, they were so fast in reporting you to the credit bureau. Unjust bill collector. There will always be a just person in authority. Let's face it, there will always be people in authority who will always give us the hard time. Alam niyo yun? May mga tao talagang natutuwa silang naghihirap. Okay? Alam niyo, I don't know if you met people like that. There are people who really have the kick to make your life miserable. I remember this was years ago. I was at the Philippine consulate, and I was applying to renew my passport. Because I was going to the Philippines and I need to renew my passport. And so there was first time. So I went there and then I lined up, and then when I reached the window, it says there, I need to renew my passport. And so they gave me this form. Okay, fill this up, and then you attach everything, and then you go back. And I was asking, do I have to line all the way back? And the answer was, yes. Okay, so, Christian tayo, pastor pa naman ako. No problem. Okay, so beautiful. Then I was filling this up, and all of a sudden, I cannot find a place to have my picture taken. And so, I asked, where do you get your picture taken? Oh, there's a room. There's a room by the end of the floor. You line up and get your picture there. So I already came prepared because I already brought my passport pictures. But for one reason or another, the background color is wrong. I don't know. Kailangan yata light blue or something like that. I had it white, but I don't forget. But for one reason or another, my picture is wrong. So when there's ito naman, pila na naman. Pila. And then pila. And then, boss, picture daw ho. Oh, dito. Okay, so picture, wait. And then eventually, I had my picture taken. So they cut it out. So I put that in my application. So balik ulit ako sa consul office. And then, ito na naman, pila na naman. Okay, so pila. And then, but when I was almost there, nagsarado. Lunch break. And then I was the one who was it earlier. They were not even eating. They were just talking to one another. And they point something like, and I got it. Basahin mo. Lunch break. I was so furious. So I went now. Lunch. Pagbalik ko, it was much longer. Ang haba. I was already outside the room when I came back. There's so many people lining up. So by the time I reached the window again, it was almost end of the day. And I was telling me, kapag ako pinabalik, ako pinabalik pa. And God really knows my heart. I was so patient. Imagine, you try to do your best to have your picture taken. You try to follow everything, single thing, and all of a sudden, they just simply doesn't care. And that's my feeling. To make the story short, so I was able to submit. But there would just be people who are in authority who just want to make you life miserable. Now, so there will always be a just judge, and there will always be poor people. Now, verse 4 it says, "For some time he refused," referring to the judge, "but finally he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack. Okay, so my last point this morning is this: the breakthrough. There will always be the breakthrough. So this is what we want in our life. We just want the breakthrough, Pastor. Just one day, and it will change my life forever. We all of us needs a breakthrough. We just need one opportunity. Just one opportunity is what I call the breakthrough. Every day the poor widow faces the judge, and this went on and on and on and on until the judge was forced to give in. Her persistence caused him to break. I repeat, her persistence caused him to break. Wow. So this is a matter of endurance, persistence. Either you will quit or the other person will quit on you. Jesus is telling us this parable to let us know, do not quit. Now, I guess the question is, how can we, Pastor, how can we endure? It's so easy for us to just give up. How can we endure? How can we resist the relentless temptations to give up? How do we resist that? I mean, how can we be sure we do not loving the world? You probably know that living in the world is easier comparing to living in our faith. It's so easy to be in the world rather to be in the Lord. I repeat that. It's easier to be in the world to be in the Lord. How can we endure to the end? How can we resist temptations? How can we be sure? You might be thinking, Pastor, if you're struggling, you'll be more closer to God. Because when we are struggling, it changes our attitude. See, the problem with that is we will have seasons of struggles and we will have seasons of abundance. We will have seasons of when we are starting up, and we will have seasons that we are just zooming in. We will have seasons of difficulties, and we will have seasons of comfortable living. So we really cannot depend on seasons, because seasons change. I know some of us here are struggling, but all of these seasons are just temporary. It will come to an end. And when that season of struggles end, so how do we keep on going? If the basis for your endurance is in moment of struggles, then when that struggles ends, then there's no more to endure. So we cannot depend, because let me just go to the next one. Good things in life can make us just as insensitive to the reality of God as the evil things in life can. Sometimes we are closer to God when we are in need or when we are struggling. But at the same time, when we are living comfortably, when we have jobs, when we have our own cars, when we are able to pay our own bills, everything, that also makes us insensitive to the reality of the existence of God. Because there are times, remember Numbers 26? I keep on reminding this. Moses says, when you reach the land of milk and honey, when you have built houses and your wealth increases, do not forget your God. It's not only struggles that that will remind us of God. Sometimes the good things in life could also remove God's reality in our lives. So how do we endure? Let me just go back to the verse 1 here. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should, this is the key, always pray and not give up. Church, resilient in prayer and resilient in not giving up. We will always have a unjust person in our lives, and we will always have poor widows to mingle with, or sometimes that will represent us. But one thing is sure, whether in season of abundance or in season of need, we should always, 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 always pray and not give up. The word of Jesus to us this morning is don't stop praying. Don't fickle out. Always pray and don't lose heart. That's the only thing that will keep us. That's why I emphasize the importance of prayer personally. When you're by yourself, you pray. God, protect me from the virus. God, protect my family. God, bless my business. God, bless my employer. Whatever it is, you keep on praying. Pray, pray, pray. And at the same time, you don't give up. You don't give up. If you don't see your prayer being answered by the Lord, you don't give up. You keep on reminding God. You have a promise. You have a promise that you will bring my family with me here in the U.S. Or you have a promise, God, that I will see my family in the Philippines. Or you have a promise that you will give me the dream of my life. You don't give up on the things that God has already given you. For I know the plans, remember that? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. You don't give up on those beautiful plans of God. And we can only endure the unjust by praying. I wish I could expound this further, but I think I have to stop in this. Prayer is powerful, very powerful. When they locked down everything, we didn't lock down our prayer service. I was maligned. I was attacked. I was bashed. Why do I keep the church open for prayer service when everything is closed? Why do you, someone even told me, why are you risking the lives of people in your church, Pastor? Don't you know the virus kills? I simply cannot let go of prayer. Because I know prayer is powerful. Individually, in congregation. There is power in prayer. If you're not a recipient, if you're not a believer of prayer, I'm telling you right now, you are here sitting in this place right now because of prayer. Amen. If you didn't even pray, let me remind you, someone did pray for you to be here. You know what God's people says? Dear Heavenly Father,